Irish national anthem is playing as the Irish flag ascends, the tricolour ascends in Ramallah. I know I wasn't the only person who did a double take on seeing this video. Ireland right now is the first European Union country to call Israel's illegal settlements on Palestinian land a de facto annexation. So what we're seeing back here is Irish-Palestinian solidarity, and that is the theme for today's show. I'm Femi Oke, and you're watching The Stream. Joining us to have this conversation, we have John, we have Asad, and we have Aisling. John, it's so good to see you. Please introduce yourself to our audience watching the stream.
Hi, Femi. How are you? Thanks for having us on. John Brady is my name. I'm the Sinn Féin spokesperson for Foreign Affairs, the main opposition party in the Irish Parliament, Dáil Éireann.
Good to have you. Hello, Asad. Dr. Asad, as you're known to many around Ireland and around the world. So good to see you. Please introduce yourself to our audience watching the stream.
I am Asad Abu Shar, the international spokesperson of the Great March of Return, which represent millions of refugees who dream of returning to their homes and property. I send greetings from Ireland to Palestine, from the land of saints and scholars to the land of the Aqsa Mosque and Sepulchre Church.
Nice to see you. Thanks for being with us on the stream. And hello, Aisling. Please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. My name is Aisling Micklethwaite, and I am the Vice Chair of the Ireland-Palestine Solidarity Campaign. We've been active since 2002, and it's really great to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you. All right, so if you are watching right now on YouTube, you can be part of this conversation. Ireland and Palestine working together. I know, it's an amazing conversation, right? Jump into the comment section, be part of today's show. John, I've got to start with you. This motion where Ireland is saying that what Israel is doing on Palestinian land is de facto annexation. How did that motion come about and your involvement in it?
Well, I suppose it's been a long time coming. It's taken a long number of months to pull together the motion. We worked with a large number of NGOs, non-governmental organisations, in developing the motion, and it really came about last year when you may remember Israel made a declaration that they were going to move ahead and annex large parts of the West Bank, and under some international pressure, they backed away from that position publicly. But we know the reality on the ground was that annexation was continuing, is continuing, and we know that from 1967 we've seen the creation of over 250 illegal colonial settlement units or settlements within the occupied territories, consisting of over 650,000 colonial settlers. So we know annexation is happening. We know the land grab of Palestinian lands has been happening despite the public position that was declared and accepted by the international community. So we brought about the motion, which was debated in the Irish Parliament in Dáil Éireann, not just in terms of making a declaration that Israel has illegally acted in annexing large portions of Palestinian land, but also acknowledging the right of self-determination for the Palestinian people.
So, Asad, I'm just looking here on my laptop at some of the images and posts underneath that video that I showed of the Irish tricolour going up in Ramallah. And we have Free Palestine here, a lot of support for Palestinians, PLO, IRA, holding hands together here, historical linking between two different peoples. And then here we have the Irish flag, the Palestinian flag. As a Palestinian who lives in Ireland, what was it like to hear this motion passed across all party lines in Ireland?
This is, of course, part of the long legacy of Irish support for the Palestinian people, because the Irish people have always been supporting the Palestinians because we were under the same British colonialism and they were persecuted from the same colonizers. And the same colonizer, for example, from Balfour, who is called in Irish history, Bloody Balfour, is called in Palestinian history also of racist and the Bloody Balfour, because it is Balfour who gave his declaration, who promised the Zionist movement to give Palestine to them. And then Churchill himself, who said that he is a Zionist, his grandfather also said the Protestants are right and they must fight. And then Churchill himself, who brought the black and tans to Ireland to persecute the Irish people, is the same person who sent them to Palestine to persecute the Palestinian people. And then Cromwell, who even said to the Irish people, to Connaught or to hell, is the same person who was dreaming of ethnically cleansing the Palestinian people from Palestine and bringing all Jews from all over the world to occupy Palestine and to cause me to be a refugee forever. So the Arab island has a long history of support. Even long before this, I'll tell you one thing. In 1981, I was in Ireland a student, and the Irish Foreign Department, the Irish Foreign Minister Brian Lenihan at that time supported the Palestinians' right to self-determination, the Palestinian right to self-determination. So we have a long history of struggle. And then Ireland as well supported not only the Palestinians, but also the South Africans to gain their own freedom.
Yeah,
so,
during apartheid times. All right. So Asad, let me share the conversation with your co-panelists. Actually, I'm just looking here on YouTube. We've got Baby Doll Goddess. I have never been more proud to be Irish. Love to Palestine on YouTube. Z_F. Salute to the Irish people and their government for standing up for humanity. All of Europe should be on the right side of history this time, ! Aisling, what is going on here? Why this moment? Why this time, do you think?
I think it's been, you know, as Asad was saying, the history between Ireland and Palestine has always been, there's a huge emotional connection with Palestinians, and it's not just happening now. I think it's been coming for a long time, and it's not great that this is the reason, you know, all the violence that happened over the last few weeks, that this is why it's coming. Something is happening now, but the support in Ireland is ongoing. It's daily. Like with our organisation and many other organisations in Ireland, the work that's being done by people is, you know, tireless. We have constant speakers. We have engagement with the media. We have a lot of connections with people in Palestine, and we support the BDS movement, and we're constantly, you know, campaigns are ongoing all the time. So it is a constant thing, and it is really great that this has happened now. And we're, you know, obviously it's a huge, you know, it's a huge moment because we're the first country in Europe for this to happen, and I hope others will follow suit. But I think, you know, now everything is a lot more visible now. Maybe there's a lot of media coverage. Palestinian voices are maybe heard now, and there's, you know, kind of a rising within Palestinian people as well, it's really good to see. So I think it's just people are more aware, and people want to help and stand in solidarity with Palestine. So yeah.
So one of the things that Asad did, he told us about the history of the solidarity between Irish people and Palestinians. But what I really love from what you were doing is like, this is contemporary right now. So when the times when we could travel before COVID, when Palestinians came to Ireland, when you hosted guest speakers, what was that like? What is that like?
So it's amazing to have Palestinian people here. They come over and, you know, they're always so strong and, you know, just brilliant people to come. We have various different types of speakers. We could have, you know, we've had children come from refugee camps in Bethlehem to do dabka dancing, and we brought them all around the country, which is all around Ireland.
Aisling, I have a little
Ireland to dance Palestinian dancing.
Okay, great, thank you. We're just catching up. Just had a little problem there with your audio, but we hear it now. No worries. John, I'm going to play this. Have a listen. This is Dublin, mid-May.
Okay.
People rallying there in Dublin in support of Palestinians, caught up in East Jerusalem conflict and violence, and also caught up on the Gaza Strip with violence as well. The timing for this motion is incredible.
Yeah, the timing worked out well, unfortunately, in many regards. We know the situation in Jazeera and Silwan and East Jerusalem with the forced evictions, the raid on the Al-Aqsa Mosque. All of this obviously came as a backdrop, and obviously the horrendous, brutal military assault on the Gaza Strip, which seen 66 children being butchered by the Israeli apartheid regime, over 260 civilians, and, you know, the targeted assault on civilian infrastructure, houses, media outlets, all being destroyed in the assault. And of course, we had the UN Security Council sitting on their hands for 10, 11 days before they even, came to a decision around a statement, calling for restraint and a ceasefire. So the motion obviously came ahead with all of this as a backdrop, and it did. It certainly focused the minds of politicians across the political divide. But there has always been, I suppose, support from the Irish people. And back in 2014, the Irish Parliament did pass a resolution unanimously to recognise the state of Palestine. Now, unfortunately, we're still waiting for that to be enacted. The Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of Ireland, if you want to call him that, simply has to make a formal declaration to officially recognise the state of Palestine. So that still hasn't happened. And I'm conscious that with the passing of this motion, it is historic. It's really important. It's a declaration that Israel has breached international law by annexing parts of, the occupied territories. But it has not to stop there. It should not stop there, because there has to be consequences. And that's where the conversation now needs to turn to. What is the Irish government going to do to punish a lawbreaker? It is not good enough, just to pass this motion, because we've had so many words of condemnation from governments across the world, but no actions to follow. And that's what's allowed Israel to act with perceived impunity, to carry on the annexation, to carry on the forced evictions and demolitions, to carry on the brutal military occupation of Palestinian lands, which obviously we've seen play out horrifically in Gaza only a couple of weeks ago.
So, Asad, I'm going to bring in a new voice to this conversation. This is Mona Sabella. Mona Sabella is a human rights advocate. She has a really important question. Have a listen to her on the video and then answer it immediately if you're able to.
What we need all states to do, not just Ireland, is to address the root causes and recognise the root causes of Palestinians' struggle, from the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians to the crime of apartheid to the annexation of territory. And countries like those in the EU must not adopt double standards in how the law is applicable, depending on the circumstances. Sanctions were imposed in the case of Russia when it annexed territory in the Ukraine. Why is the same not happening in the case of Israel?
Yes, indeed. I think that all European countries should not use double standard policy, because they should address the root cause, the uprooting, the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people ever since 1948. And then I think European countries used, and especially Ireland, played a very, very important part in the freedom of South Africa. And Kader Asmal said once, who was the chairman of the anti-apartheid movement in Ireland, and I was a member at that time, he said that our victory over apartheid was due in no small measure to the dedication and struggle and sacrifices of the Irish people. So I think Europeans can do more than issue resolutions. They must take action. Action speaks louder than words. They must impose sanctions on Israel. They must bring those war criminals to trial. They must divest from them. They must implement the UN resolution, resolution 194, which calls for the right of return and compensation of all Palestinian refugees who have been uprooted by the Zionist movement. The resolution 3236, which calls for our right to self-determination, our right of return, our right to statehood, our right to sovereignty, our right to use all possible means to resist our enemies. So I think Europe can do a lot. Europe should stop using this double standard policy,
right.
Europe and America. And I'm talking to the Americans.
Can I come in on that point? Because it's a very important point, because there's sheer hypocrisy here, not just from the European Union, but the international community as well. And I was speaking in the Irish Parliament last night when we had statements on the situation in Belarus, and there was sanctions imposed on Belarus immediately after the hijacking of an Irish aircraft to arrest a journalist. There was sanctions imposed on Russia immediately after annexing Crimea, and yet here we have a gross violator, a serial violator of international law, of humanitarian law, and has been allowed to get away with it for decades. We have a country that is being investigated by the International Criminal Court. Only last week, the United Nations Human Rights Council have called for an independent investigation,
so John,
not just in terms of the human rights violations in Gaza, but also in Israel.
We asked if the Israel embassy in Ireland the ambassador would join us, and they refused. But we did want to go to this. Let me just show this to you. I know you've seen it, but this is really for the benefit of our audience. Israel outright rejects Ireland's outrageous and baseless position regarding Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria. This position reflects a blatantly one-sided and simplistic policy. John, your policy is simplistic.
Well, certainly not. It's not my policy. It's a policy, and as I mentioned, UN Security Council resolutions that have been passed. So this is an international position. Resolution 2334, which defines the Palestinian lands. We know that Israel is a serial violator of many resolutions. I mentioned the fact that they are being investigated. So am I surprised that the Israeli Foreign Ministry or Office would, criticise or condemn the Irish position? Absolutely not. I mean, the arrogance shows no bounds.
Can I just jump in there as well, John? It is, we've seen recently that the reports, the Human Rights Watch reports and B'Tselem reports, it's been declared by human rights organisations that this is apartheid, and we need to use the language more. And it's shameful that it's taken this long. It's great that this motion is in place now, but action needs to happen. Not just in Ireland, international support is hugely important to Palestine, and now is the time. It's always the time to do it, but now while we have this motion, we need to keep pushing for more support, for sanctions, for meaningful support, and not just words.
Sure. I'm so glad you said that, Aisling, because all of our guests, because there is what's happened with this motion. It's historical. You are standing out there beyond any other European Union country. Let me show our audience a few pictures here on my laptop. And a lot of this is feel-good stuff. A group of Irish artists, filmmakers and others projecting a video of solidarity with the people of Gaza. And then we go to the Irish Parliament members wearing masks with Palestinian symbols. All right, so we're seeing the symbolism, but there is no way right now that Ireland is going to say we're going to boycott the goods in Israel, right? That's not happening, John.
Yeah.
That's not happening. And also, you haven't acknowledged Palestine as a country yet. So it looks good, it feels good. What's the action?
Well, there needs to be actions, because passing the motion was one thing, and without consequences to hold Israel to account, it's meaningless. And that's where the conversation now needs to turn, because the Irish 3 years ago, there was a piece of legislation that was brought forward in Ireland, the Occupied Territories Bill, and the Irish government blocked that, and that would ban the trade of goods from the occupied territory.
Why did they block it? Why did they block it?
Well, look, they can explain that themselves. They've hidden behind
what did they tell you, John?
incorrect. Well, they said they hid behind false legal advice, and I think it was a red herring. I don't think there's any truth in it. But now that needs to come back onto the table, because until there are sanctions imposed on Israel, they will continue to act. And the Irish people are demanding it. There was a petition handed into the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Simon Coveney's office yesterday. 88,000 Irish people signed the petition calling for the expulsion of the Israeli ambassador. Today, students from Trinity College in Ireland occupied that same offices, demanding sanctions immediately on the brutal apartheid Israeli system. So the Irish people will not allow the Irish government to sit on their hands here. They are demanding that they take action, and in turn, hopefully that will act as a catalyst for not just other European countries to follow suit, but more importantly, let it be the start of an anti-apartheid movement that needs to happen internationally to force Israel to adhere to humanitarian law and to international law, and to ensure that Palestinian people have the right to self-determination.
John, I want to get, and Asad and Aisling, I want to get one more comment into the programme. And this comes from a council member of Sinn Féin, which is the same party as John's party, and the party that really pushed for this motion to happen. And he is talking about practical action. Aisling, you come off the back of this video comment.
Ireland has a long and proud history of supporting the Palestinians and demanding freedom for Palestine. And I firmly believe that comes from a place where we ourselves suffered at the hands of British imperialism. But the support for Palestine has broadened and deepened in the last few weeks, and reached a point where the Irish government supported a Sinn Féin motion that clearly called for an end to settlements, to boycott, divestment and sanctions against the Israeli state. And most importantly, it also stated that the settlements were wrong and they were annexation of Palestinian land, which is a crime under international law. And now what we need to do is work together with other countries and ensure that Israel is held to account for that crime.
Yeah, so we, I completely agree. In terms of what we do as a solidarity organisation, we currently have a campaign called Apartheid Free Zones, which we are planning on having as many organisations, businesses, if you're a councillor, you can sign up a community group and you can declare yourself apartheid free, which we hope to, carry across Ireland. And that's, from our perspective, what we can do, we can push, people to do that. And from the government's perspective, they need to push sanctions, and I think together it will be stronger.
On YouTube, we have Kuchiki Rukia. Thank you for watching the show. Such a good question. I'm going to give our guests 30 seconds to answer this question. How will the Irish actions impact the life of the average Palestinian people? You have 30 seconds. You can do it in one answer, in one word, or you can do it in one sentence. Aisling.
I think continued solidarity and pressure. We'll keep going. We've been doing this for a long time, and we won't stop until Palestine is free and people have the right to return and the demands of the Palestinian people are met. We will keep going.
John.
I think it's given Palestinian people a little bit of hope. I'm conscious that this is one brick removed from a massive apartheid wall, but it has given Palestinian people hope that a country somewhere is prepared to take a stand and call it as it is, apartheid and illegal under international law.
Asad, what difference does it make? How will this affect everyday Palestinians in their lives?
Yeah, this is very important, because now for the Palestinians, they know that once Ireland announced that this is illegal annexation means, what does it mean? Because annexation means ethnic cleansing, pumping out more Palestinians and pumping on more Jews and occupying more land and making more refugees and more homeless people. And this is why, by translating this resolution into practice and then by supporting it with more actions such as sanctions, and expelling the Israeli ambassador, imposing arms embargo, I think this is giving hope to the Palestinian people that Palestine is not left alone. There are all people, loving
Dr.
people.
Assad, thank you.
Peaceful, loving.
Our ideas of 30 seconds are slightly different, Dr. Assad.
Okay.
Aisling and John, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you, YouTubers, for your comments, your questions. See you next time. Take care, everybody.